Consciousness and physics of quantum field ether. Consciousness and the physics of ether are one and the same thing. It is only our mind that discriminates between the two and splits them into outward and inward. The physics of ether looks like the foundation for the manifestation of the outward universe as the image in our mind with all the subatomic particles, elements, and physical laws, stars, and galaxies, whereas consciousness is something that is only within us. We will see in the second part of this book that consciousness manifests itself as inorganic shapes, but all organic, mineral, plant, and animal life as well, and all of that to a much higher degree than our mind only. It is the same consciousness, it only manifests differently inside and outside of us. Only owing to the function of our mind can we perceive the outward life appears more real than our inner world. In reality, the opposite is true. The same consciousness that creates the universe is the consciousness that creates our mind. Owing to this fact, the mind's ability to use a universal consciousness mind is ultimately a factor that shapes the reality we live in. And much more than that, before our birth in the body, while we were only consciousness of the soul, we created all the living forms, all the conditions of life for the body, this whole planet, and in effect the entire physical cosmos. This is all the power of consciousness of the divine absolute, whose individual expression is our soul, and not the power of our individual mind, which uses the same consciousness, albeit in a very limited way during its time in the physical body. To overcome illusions of the mind, one needs to understand the true nature of a consciousness that is the same in the physics of ether as well as in our mind. This understanding may be achieved if we understand the nature of time, mass, and space. Consciousness is the essence of the physics of ether, which we can experience in our mind only as a timeless presence in the present moment. Therefore, the disappearance of time and being present in the timeless present is the experience of presence in the consciousness of the physics of ether quantum field. Believe me, I'm not falling very well either. And hence all the importance that is attributed to here and now and being in the present moment experience. The mass or physical form of everything or phenomena originates through the momentary shaping of ether into such a form or phenomena. Since the physics of ether is timeless, everything that is formed in space is formed instantly. Therefore, there are no real objects and phenomena per se that move across space and time separately, but ether, as the quantum field or akasha, instantly shapes into everything that exists. In that way, nothing is different from ether or the quantum field, which is space itself. The foundation of everything is space. Ether is space. It is primary. Everything else is possibly only within this space. Therefore, when we are referring to the quantum field or ether, we are not dealing with something ultra small, but something ultra big, infinite, and absolute. The mind twists the whole reality into a completely opposite state. Only when we transcend the mind do we see the unity of everything in a timeless present. Practically, it means that every physical shape and phenomena phenomenon we can see is a reflection of consciousness and conscious intent. A human's unconsciousness is reflected through perceiving physical things and phenomena as dead matter, as something outside themselves, outward, causing them not to pay attention to it. They do not take it seriously and with respect. Hence their violent acts without respect, not toward things and nature only, but toward other people and themselves as well. Since they are unaware of what is here and now, the human projects their highest respect outwardly onto God into an abstract principle. The awakened people or saints saw God concretely here and now in all things, in themselves as well as out of themselves. They always saw God face to face. It means they saw God in every material occurrence, always and everywhere. The material world to them is nothing but manifested God. They are always in Him, like fish in water. All they understood was that the mind is what projects everything as the opposite. The mind projects the image of the world, which to us looks like the world is outside of us. We do not see the reality of the world as the divine consciousness that is omnipresent in our essence. We still or transcend our mind when we become aware of the essence or meaning. We constantly think only because we are searching for the essence and meaning in everything, hence our need to imagine and explain, to communicate outwardly with other people and inwardly with ourselves through an inner dialogue or opinion, as it were. Once we become aware of the truth, our mind stops. Those are the moments of awe and serenity when we stumble upon the irrefutable truth. We always stand speechless before reality. The essence of all phenomena and events is that all of them are instantly formed from space. It is the physics of ether. Once our mind is adequate for space, when it comprehends the physics of ether, enlightenment as such, stillness of the mind becomes the natural result, the transcendence of it. In a nutshell, we can get to this phase when we overcome the personal and subjective use of a consciousness that restricts us to the limitations of the mind and learn about the objective nature of consciousness of the physics of ether. Our mind stops then because we begin to see one timeless whole, the unity and the meaning of it all. We envisage only what is unfamiliar to us so we may get to know it better. Once the true nature of existence is revealed, or the essence of everything we can think of, then we no longer have a reason for constant deliberation. How does consciousness that is based on the physics of ether work? Always in a healing manner. There is nothing one need to do with such objective consciousness. It corrects everything that should be corrected by itself, removes all misconceptions, and brings positive energy. For example, if we are obsessed with fury and lower drives, only a moment of our time is required to go back to ourselves and all the unfavorable states will vanish. A change in the rhythm of breathing or the practice of meditation will suffice if only for a moment we return to the presence of here and now. When we are fully conscious of ourselves being here and now, we become independent of everything else, of our imagined states that project us into various delusional states and into space and time, always aspiring to attain something outwardly. The only cure for all the suffering and conflict is the return to oneself here and now. Such awareness releases us from all illusion, confrontation, and plight, whether inside or outside of us. All the negative states of consciousness cannot exist in any other way but through the oblivion of oneself. By losing the presence of the awareness of here and now, the loss of such presence is suffering. The difference between the physics of ether and our mind creates a gap between the unmanifested state of the quantum field and the manifested world of objects. The mind turns the physics of ether into the world of objects. In its highest or most subtle state, the ether, nature has properties of spaceless and timeless holographic unity. It is the quantum field that represents the pure source and potential of all possibilities. The nature of its electromagnetic frequencies is scalar and stationary, non-Hertzian, because the unity of all opposites rules in this vastness of space. Information is transferred through the scalar field instantly throughout the entire cosmos. Therefore, the scalar field is the foundation of overall life. It is the source of all life, the source of energy or prana nowadays. It is being discovered in experimental physics, and due to the prohibition of the term ether, various names are given to it, such as vacuum or zero-point energy, dark matter, quantum field, matrix. Technically speaking, the unmanifested or elementary nature, such as ether or akasha, is based on the stationary or non-Hertzian waves, which are faster than light, and the manifested nature we can observe as a multitude of objects and phenomena is based on the vector Hertzian waves, which are slower than light. The nature of non-Hertzian electromagnetic waves is stationary, volumetric, resembling a sphere that is breathing and vibrating. In that respect, it is different from the transversal vector form of the classical electromagnetic waves, which are all slower than the speed of light. On this spherical non-Hertzian principle, all celestial bodies, stars, and planets are based, and all of them, the planets and stars, grow and expand. All the Torsian movements of energy is in nature, from individual living beings to galaxies, is based on that principle. This entire cosmos is electromagnetic phenomenon in its foundation. Stars are sparks that came into being as a consequence of the electrostatic discharge in large proportions. They get their energy from space, but gravity itself is also an electrostatic phenomenon of larger proportions. Stars are not thermonuclear furnaces by definition, nor is gravity based on mass. The borderline between Hertzian and non-Hertzian vibrations of the divine particle is the speed of light. This is the borderline between the unmanifested and manifested states of the quantum field. All Hertzian motion takes place below the speed of light and is therefore visible to our senses. It is the three-dimensional world spreading out in space and time. All non-Hertzian motion is above the speed of light and is inaccessible to the physical senses, but the manifestations of it are acceptable to the inner senses. Its timeless presence of all possibilities and its momentary transfer of information more than anything else. We can become aware of it by developing our inner senses through meditation and astral projection. We use inner senses when we are out of our body in higher dimensions. The more we actualize the timeless and omnipresent non-Hertzian consciousness within the space-time Hertzian phenomenon, i.e. consciousness from the higher dimensions that we actualize in the physical world, connecting inner senses with those of the physical realm, the more we are able to function altering reality and surpassing the limitations of space and time within the Hertzian motion. Every form of creativity and change is in reality our attempt to act from non-Hertzian consciousness on Hertzian reality. Non-Hertzian reality is primary. It is the reality of the divine absolute itself and its divine particle. What does consciousness of the quantum field look like in practice as the stationary consciousness? According to the very term stationary, time stops and disappears in this experience, everything becomes one timeless present, and space disappears together with it in the sense that motion disappears. We no longer move through space, but experience space through ourselves. We become limitless, and within ourselves we are always motionless, while overall existence rotates around us. Our thoughts also move, and we are there still witnesses. Feelings move, and there's still witnesses. Our body moves, and we are its still witness. The whole world moves and happens around us, who are the still transcendental witnesses. In this way, we are always the center of all phenomena, like the center of a sphere. Our transcendental focus rests on the perfection of all phenomena. It is perfect like the sphere. Every aspect of existence is equally set far apart from our center. The model of a sphere is simply an alternative way to say that existence is like a hologram. Stationary or non-Hertzian frequency is a possibility because the cosmos is a hologram. Although we are involved in actions, our consciousness is stationary. Movement and stillness are the same thing. Action is inaction. It is possible only due to the comprehensiveness of the stationary quantum mind. It entails all possibilities, hence it is always correct. The mind moves only when it is without such comprehensiveness, and it has the illusion that it must attain something outside of itself. Once it loses its completeness, it tries to do something. That our world disappears because we come to know it as our own being. The whole of nature is our mind and not only the physical body. All of this we should not conquer and achieve as a result of some effort or mystical experience. It is a reality that is always there. Some other reality does not exist. Our mind is the only thing that is outside of reality and detaches us from illusions. All it takes is for us to awaken from the illusions of our mind, harmonize with reality, and not fight the illusion. Our task is not to fight the illusion, nor can we do so because the illusion does not exist. We strengthen the illusion by maintaining and believing in it when we grow attached to it. Also, when we try to fight it, when we find it repulsive. The transcendence of that word, transcendence of both extremes is needed for the cognition of the true nature of consciousness that is the foundation of everything, of both the subject and the object. It is the only practice. It is called meditation or yoga, and it was defined scientifically by Patanjali. No object is something in itself or by itself. That is why in Buddhism there is the teaching of emptiness, sunyata. This notion has been misunderstood to a large degree, and Buddhists stick to the notion of emptiness in the wrong way. It simply means that no object we observe is outward, independent of us, or detached from consciousness, which perceives it simply because the object is the same consciousness with which it is observed. Our individuality is the same consciousness. Therefore, in Buddhism, together with emptiness, one learns of the non-existence of individuality itself, anatta, as a separate and a real in itself and by itself. The same applies to the subject who perceives the objects as what can be applied to the object themselves. Everything is consciousness that manifests itself in all possible ways, both subtle and gross, outwardly and inwardly. Between the conscious observer, subject, and object, 4 dimensions exist that make all the difference. They divide the one same consciousness into gross outer objects, the element of earth, and the conscious individual who cognizes objects, the element of air. There are no special separate objects in the absolute consciousness that would be real by themselves as separate objects. It is all only the absolute consciousness, both the subject that perceives and the consciousness of perception, as well as the object of perception. It was explained by Nagarjuna in his work Mulamadi Yomaka Karika. Buddha never spoke about it in such a way. He only stressed that objects are empty and that emptiness, sunyata, is the highest reality. He did so for educational purposes to make sure his disciples did not forget and obstruct themselves in understanding this truth, but he instead encouraged them to know the truth directly themselves and to realize that their consciousness is the same as the gross world they see outside. If the whole truth had been told, they would also have projected it as an idea. The mind projects everything as an idea and then hangs on to it as though it were real, even when there is an obvious discrepancy with reality. Even the ultimate truth the mind is able to separate from itself and project outside. The mind is ego, and it never surrenders on its own. It exists based on creating virtual reality out of everything. It is useful for us to understand reality. We learn quicker like that. The problem that arises is that the mind has no boundaries. It creates a virtual reality out of everything and an ideology with which it will perpetuate its existence. Even information that existence is pure consciousness like itself, that everything is empty, that nothing is outside the mind, that nothing is substantial, and there are no objects that are real in themselves and by themselves. When we become aware of such true nature in its original state out there with all the stationary, non-Hertzian properties, our state of consciousness will correspond to such a state. Consciousness that is becoming aware of reality cannot differ from reality itself in any way. Consciousness of self-knowledge, the highest wakefulness or enlightenment, Mahat Buddhi, has the same characteristics of stationarity and timelessness, completeness in itself, like a sphere, like Akasha. It could be said that supreme consciousness or wakefulness is as non-Hertzian as the quantum field. Human lower consciousness, limited by the mind and ego identified with the physical body, has Hertzian properties that correlate with three-dimensionality. When the human in meditation attains pure transcendental consciousness, they are then on the same level with the universe quantum field of all possibilities with Aether or Akasha, and their creative potential becomes unlimited. The old mental patterns that restricted them disappear, and all the new ones become an option. The manifestation of power CD is the influence of consciousness directly from the Aether onto the physical plane. Supernatural powers are the physics of Aether. Humans can do this through themselves because they are the microcosm. If the entire cosmos were not contracted in them, they would not be able to do so. Their self would not be a mirror of the universal quantum field that over all existence originates from, nor would their consciousness be able to impact the quantum field. They can do so because consciousness of the quantum field is consciousness of their self, of their soul. To the degree the human is complete in their essence, in their soul, to that degree they can positively and creatively influence nature and events.